Right, well, Monday afternoon officially. Well, let's wait till then. Fine. Okay. Nothing else of interest in the world
Yes,
today?
sir. Very significant, this goddamn New York Times expose of the most highly classified documents of the war.
Oh, that. I see. I didn't read the story, but you mean that was leaked out of the Pentagon?
In the heat of the Vietnam War, a quiet revolution began, not on the battlefield, but in the halls of power and journalists' offices. A 7,000-page secret exposed lies told by 4 U.S. presidents, shocking a nation and shaking the foundations of trust between the government and its people. This was the moment America learned the truth about Vietnam, through a whistleblower and a pile of classified documents known as the Pentagon Papers. After World War II, the U.S. was riding high as the world's biggest economic powerhouse, while European countries struggled to rebuild their lives and empires. When France lost Vietnam in 1954, the U.S. stepped in, determined to prevent communism from spreading. What followed was years of brutal guerrilla warfare with no clear winner in sight. By 1973, Nixon signed the Paris Peace Accords, promising to end direct U.S. involvement in the war. But the fighting didn't stop. By 1975, Saigon fell to North Vietnamese forces, officially marking a communist victory. News coverage of the war changed everything, and Americans began asking hard questions about why the U.S. got involved in Vietnam in the first place. The Vietnam War had dragged on for years, leaving people exhausted, frustrated, and confused. Then in 1971, Daniel Ellsberg, a former Pentagon analyst, leaked a classified report titled Report of the Office of the Secretary of Defense Vietnam Task Force. This 7,000-page document exposed decades of U.S. deceit about its involvement in Vietnam. Ellsberg, who initially supported the war, had a change of heart after working on the report. He believed the public deserved to know the truth. As he later said, "By 2 years in Vietnam, I was reporting very strongly there was no prospect of progress, so the war should not be continued." But what exactly did these Pentagon Papers reveal? Well, let's dive into those revelations. The U.S. gradually became more involved in Vietnam, starting with financial and advisory support to the French in the 1950s, and then authorizing U.S. troops to begin military offensives. This escalated during the 1960s under Presidents Kennedy and Johnson. One of the most shocking parts was that the U.S., under JFK, helped plan the overthrow and assassination of South Vietnamese President Ngo Dinh Diem. While the official story claimed it was a local event, the Pentagon Papers revealed deep U.S. involvement. This 1964 event led to more U.S. military action and wasn't as clear-cut as officials claimed. The government said North Vietnam had attacked U.S. ships without provocation, but the papers showed the truth was far more complicated and possibly exaggerated. The Johnson administration painted a rosy picture of progress in Vietnam, privately admitting the situation was grim. The government misled both Congress and the public about the war's success. The U.S. was secretly bombing neighboring countries like Cambodia and Laos, something the public had no idea about. Perhaps the most damning revelation was that officials knew by the mid-1960s that the war was unwinnable. Despite this, they kept escalating U.S. involvement, worried about losing credibility and political standing. Ellsberg copied the documents at night, risking everything, including his freedom, to reveal the truth. He later stated, "I was willing to risk my life to stop the war." Facing charges under the Espionage Act, Ellsberg knew he could spend the rest of his life in prison. When the New York Times started publishing the Pentagon Papers, the Nixon administration tried to block further publication, claiming it endangered national security. This led to the landmark Supreme Court case New York Times Company versus the United States, 1971. In a 6-3 decision, the court ruled in favor of the press, emphasizing that the First Amendment protects freedom of the media and that prior restraint, government censorship before publication, is rarely justified. This case reinforced the press's role in holding the government accountable and set a precedent for transparency and free speech in the U.S. The Pentagon Papers sparked widespread anti-war sentiment and deepened public distrust in the government. They also inspired investigative journalism, paving the way for revelations like Watergate and Edward Snowden's NSA leaks. Reforms like the War Powers Act of 1973 sought to limit presidential authority in military actions, but the paper's most lasting impact was their reminder of the human cost of government deception. The Pentagon Papers didn't just reveal deception, they underscored the profound consequences of those decisions for countless lives.